Rob Reiner's here. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you, Ari?
I'm great. I always love seeing you. You got an interesting project here. First, before we get to yours, what did you think of the table read?
Oh, it's all good. I mean, everything that's designed to get information to the public is good. People haven't read the report. They don't know what's in it. And it has more evidence of criminality than any president in history. So anything that can help educate the public is good.
What is the plot here?
The plot? Well, I mean, we have, last week we put out a piece about collusion, which is the first volume of the report, and there's tons of evidence of collusion, contrary to the fact that the president keeps saying no collusion. There's tons of evidence of collusion in the first volume. The second volume, which is the video we have out today, outlines much of the obstruction of justice. And so these are crimes. I mean, whether they rise to high crimes and misdemeanors, that's up to the Congress to decide.
Well, obstruction, there's the evidence of a crime in Volume 2. I don't think you say you want people to know what's in the report. I don't think Volume 1 gets to the evidence of a criminal level, the way Mueller wrote it.
No, it's not. Collusion, as you know, is not set out in statute. But a high crime and misdemeanor is not necessarily a crime. The obstruction, yes, is a crime. But I would argue that coordinating efforts with a hostile foreign power to win an election might rise to the level of an impeachable offense.
What did you think, and then we'll look a little more at the new video, what did you think when Trump, after saying no collusion for years, landed on, well, but I would do it in 2020 if I had to or I wanted to?
Well, first of all, by virtue of saying that, he admitted to the fact that he did collude. So he said, yeah, I did it, and I would do it again. So, I mean, the weird thing about Trump is that he basically tells you the crimes that he's committed in plain sight. And because of that, we all go, well, I guess it's okay. How is it okay? How is it okay?
Would he be a believable president in a movie?
No. And as a matter of fact, if you pitch this idea to a studio head to say, we've got this, it's a story about a failed businessman who is a reality television star who becomes president, you'd say, well, it must be a satire. It can't happen. It's not believable.
It's wild. Yeah. Or if you had a movie where Rick Perry was the character who said he wanted to eliminate a department and then later Trump wins and puts him in charge of that department, right? That'd be a little too much. Yeah,
you have thousands of those kinds of things all throughout the Trump administration. It like writes itself, but it's too obvious.
It's too obvious. Let's take a look at a little more of the case you're making on obstruction. Here we go.
Unfortunately, though, very few people have read the report.
And before the report was even released, Trump's Attorney General William Barr lied about its contents.
And told the American people that the president had done nothing wrong.
That is simply not true. And Trump knows it.
Now, let me mix the good with the criticism, okay?
Okay, let's go.
The good is, speaking as someone who loves movies and film, I love all the people you have up there, so it's great. And I think it's cool you got them all involved and excited to do this. The criticism is, does this really work? And are you sort of giving into the Trump's media, Twitter, everything becoming a kind of an entertainment thing? Or is this really part of just one more way? People obviously can read the report. It's one more way to get people who might otherwise not learn any of this.
Well, that's the idea. It's basically to raise awareness of what's actually in the report. I mean, the first video we did had well over 5 million views. So somebody's seeing
it was how
this.
Much?
Over 5 million.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. And then
you know what they'd say on Instagram about that, Rob?
What's that?
They'd say you have clout.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that what they say? Okay, I should go onto Instagram.
They say that, and if you don't have it, they say you're a clout chaser. That's like people who want to get millions of views and don't get them. But you're on the better side of that. So you're saying when you say
am I an influencer? Am I an influencer?
You are.
I want to be an influencer.
You are an influencer.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of paid ads you would rile up, but I don't think you're in a place in your life where you need them.
No.
But let's put it like this on the politics, and I happen to know you a little bit, so I actually know you know a lot of politics, which makes sense because you know storytelling, you know plots. When you say you're reaching 5 million people, what does that mean for the impeachment push? Do you think there's any potential momentum left, or do you look at this as a last-ditch effort where Pelosi's basically shut it down?
Well, no, I don't think she shut it down, but I do think time is running out. I don't think you can slide into the 2020 election cycle, into that year and launch impeachment proceedings. I think
last question.
That has to start now. It has to start now. And this whole idea is to push the leadership, push Nancy Pelosi to do this.
And that goes to how hard folks are playing. You're a Democrat, right?
Yes.
But you sound like you've had it up to here. Let me read what you wrote most recently. We're up to 78 House members calling for an impeachment inquiry. At this rate, the most lawless president in history may never be held accountable for his crimes. I gave up on the GOP cult long ago. Hate to say it. I'm starting to feel that way about the ineffectual Dems. Are you speaking to Pelosi? And what are you saying here? And would you consider leaving the Democratic Party over this?
No, I'm not going to leave the Democratic Party. But what I'm trying to say is that read the report. Every member should read this report. If you read this report, as you just had Jim Himes, announcing on the floor of the House yesterday that he is, in favor of an impeachment inquiry. If you read the report, it's impossible not to say you want to at least start impeachment inquiry. And by the way, if you do that, it triggers the ability to get documents, to compel testimony much more expeditiously.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.